My name is Jacob, I live in Tallahassee, and I'm 29 years old. Well, I hope you enjoy this new story, an experience that marked me deeply and that I now want to share with you. Let's go back to 2018. It was summer and party season in the city, and I was feeling that anxiety that parties always bring. I've never been the kind of guy who attracts attention at first sight, but I've always been lucky in certain situations. That year, the story began with my cousin Sophie. We'd been very close since we were little, growing up together in many ways, sharing secrets and adventures. Sophie had moved to the capital to live with her friend Beatrice, whom she affectionately called Lily, and I later found out was a transvestite. The two of them had planned to go to parties with a lively program and invited me to spend those days with them. I really needed a change of scenery, and the invitation came at just the right time. I accepted immediately and couldn't wait to get there. As soon as I disembarked, Sophie wasn't home yet, but Lily herself opened the door. She was a woman who drew attention not only because of her appearance, but also because of her energy, which seemed to infect everyone around her. "Hi, you must be Jacob, right?" she said with a smile. Lily's voice was calm and her eyes were attentive, as if they were studying me a little. "Yes, it's me. And you're the famous Lily," I replied, trying to sound relaxed, although I felt a little nervous. Lily laughed and seemed comfortable with being watched, a natural confidence that made me want to get closer. After helping me organize my things, she asked me to wait for Sophie at a nearby restaurant. We walked there, chatting about light topics at first, but little by little Lily showed that she had a very direct manner. When I asked her what it was like to share an apartment with Sophie, she laughed. "Sophie, she's a character, but we get on really well. And you? I've always heard of you, but this is the first time we've met, isn't it?" Lily looked at me with obvious curiosity. "Yeah, I've heard a lot about you too. And now it looks like I'm going to see everything live," I joked, laughing along with her. We had fun talking about the funny situations of living with someone. Lily was the type who laughed easily, which made the atmosphere light, and I soon realized that I was becoming more and more curious about her. We spent a long time in the restaurant, laughing and talking back and forth about our experiences, until Sophie arrived. She found us laughing and quickly joined us, commenting on how comfortable I seemed with her friend. "I can't believe you're getting on like this. You hardly even knew each other," joked Sophie with a slightly mischievous look on her face. Lily looked at me and smiled, as if confirming that she felt the connection too. I smiled back, a little awkwardly, but enjoying the feeling. I didn't realize it at the time, but those hours with Lily would be just the beginning of an unforgettable experience, one that would take me completely out of my comfort zone. When we got back to the apartment from the restaurant, Sophie was exhausted. She went straight to her room to rest, and Lily and I stayed in the living room, lying on the sofa in one of those moments that begin with a comfortable silence. I looked around, trying to process everything that had happened that day. Lily, next to me, seemed to observe everything in a different way, with a gaze full of meaning. "So tell me," she broke the silence, "do you always get on like that quickly?" She smiled, a smile that had a mixture of curiosity and something else. "Actually, I think it's only when I meet someone who makes me feel at ease," I replied without thinking too much, letting something slip that I might not have said at another time. It was true, Lily had a special way of creating a connection. She tilted her head as if studying me more closely. "You and Sophie seem very close. I'm glad you decided to come. The capital is lively, but it's even more fun when you have company to explore with, isn't it?" "Yeah, I see I was right to accept the invitation," I said, and we both laughed. Soon the conversation became more fluid, and we started talking about more personal matters, such as the challenges and changes we've each faced in recent years. "Sometimes the most unexpected things are the ones that end up changing us," Lily commented. She had this way of philosophizing that made any conversation more interesting, and somehow that just made me want to listen to her more. Lily began to talk about her life experiences. She told me about her prejudices and stories full of courage, always with a deep look in her eyes and that intense way of hers. At one point, I found myself telling her about some of the challenging moments I've faced, things I might not have shared with someone else. It was easy to talk to her. She listened with genuine attention, making comments that showed she was really interested in understanding who I was. "You know, Jacob, I always think that you only really understand yourself when you find someone who is willing to listen, and sometimes that's all you need," she said, looking at me in a way that made me feel a unique connection. That night, I felt that Lily was someone I was destined to meet. Someone who not only listened to me, but also seemed to read between the lines, deciphering even what I didn't say out loud. The evening progressed, and somehow the atmosphere between us seemed to become more intimate. At one point, we fell silent, and Lily gave me a longer look. It was as if she wanted to say something, but without needing words. I think I'm starting to see the city in a new way, I mumbled, a little unsure of what I was saying. Lily laughed, but it was a light laugh, full of understanding. "What are you trying to say, Jacob?" she asked, her gaze penetrating. I didn't know what to say. She was close, the room empty, and something seemed to vibrate in the air. "I don't know. I guess I feel more open to certain things," I replied, trying to be honest. She tilted her head, and for a moment I thought she was going to say something else, but she just nodded, as if she already knew what I meant. Later, when the conversation switched to relationships and the choices we make in life, Lily became reflective. "I've allowed myself to take risks a few times, and they've been the best decisions I've made," she confessed, her gaze lost for a moment. "You seem to be someone who knows what she wants," I said to her, a little surprised. She smiled as if she found my observation funny. "Not always, but I've learned that what we miss out on can be what marks us the most," she replied with an air of mystery. Something in that moment created an even stronger bond between us, and I realized that this wasn't just a party, but an opportunity to experience something different, something I still didn't fully understand. The night wore on, and the conversation seemed to take an increasingly intense turn. Lily moved a little closer, just enough for our shoulders to touch. "Do you think we should always follow what our heart tells us?" she asked, her voice low as if it were a profound question. "I think that for once it's worth taking a chance," I replied. She looked at me, and a silence took over the room. We didn't say anything else for a moment, but it was as if something was being said all the same. That moment connected us in a special way, as if only the two of us were there and the rest of the world disappeared. The exchange of glances and shy smiles made it clear that we both felt something in the air. That night, our farewell with Lily was marked by a moment that seemed to have been taken out of a movie. It was late when we decided it was best to rest. She stared at me for a while, and just as we were about to say goodbye, a gentle touch of her hand on mine made me stop. I felt my heart racing, a mixture of anxiety and curiosity about what it meant. "Good night, Jacob," she said. But the way her hand slid through mine before letting go left me with the feeling that there was more there. I looked at her, and our gazes met for an instant that seemed to linger in time. The room was silent, and everything around seemed to have stopped. Deep down, I knew that something special was happening, and that, in a way, I wanted to find out how far it would go. On the way to the bedroom, I kept reliving every detail of that farewell. The touch, the look, everything seemed so natural, and, at the same time, so full of meaning. When I went to bed, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were all on her, the smile she gave me, the way she looked at me, as if she knew exactly what was going through my head. I spent hours rolling around in bed, trying to understand what I was feeling. It was strange, new, and even a little scary, but I knew it was something I wanted to explore. The night passed slowly, and when I finally fell asleep, I dreamt of her, of that moment, as if my mind was trying to capture every detail and keep it forever. The next morning brought with it a different atmosphere. I woke up with a strange feeling, as if reality had somehow changed. At breakfast, Lily was there, waiting for me with her usual smile. But now it seemed that there was an extra energy between us. Sophie, unaware of anything, kept talking about the plans for the day, while Lily and I exchanged discreet glances. She gave me complicit smiles, little gestures that only I seemed to notice. This increased my curiosity and, at the same time, made the atmosphere between us more charged with expectation. "So, Jacob, how was the evening?" she asked casually, but there was a slight tease in her tone. "It was quiet," I replied, trying not to give away the confusion she had caused me. She just smiled, as if she knew exactly the effect she was having on me. Sophie decided that we would go out and explore the city and enjoy the parties that were going on everywhere. The streets were full of color, music, and joy, and the atmosphere was one of pure celebration. As we walked, Lily and I exchanged subtle touches and disguised smiles, as if we were sharing a secret of our own. Our physical proximity in the crowded streets made everything even more intense. At one point, while we were on a block, Lily held my hand so that I wouldn't get lost in the crowd. But that touch was anything but innocent. The warmth of her hand in mine seemed to say more than any words. At the end of the day, exhausted from the parties and the energy of the streets, we went back to the apartment. Sophie went to take a shower and then said she was falling asleep and retired to bed. It was just Lily and me in the living room, and the tension that had built up throughout the day now seemed to be on the verge of boiling over. Sitting side by side on the sofa, the silence between us seemed full of unspoken things. Lily looked at me, and this time she didn't look away. "So, what did you think of the festivities in the capital?" she asked. But it was clear that the meaning of the question went far beyond the festivities. It was much more intense than I expected," I replied, trying to choose my words. She smiled, and the sparkle in her eyes seemed to reflect exactly what I was feeling. We stood there, looking at each other in silence, and I felt my heart race. It was as if time had stopped, and the rest of the world no longer existed. "You know, Jacob, sometimes you just have to enjoy the moment," she said, her voice soft, and moved a little closer. I no longer knew what was right or wrong. I just knew that at that moment, all I wanted was to be there next to her. On an impulse, I moved closer too, and our faces were just a few centimeters apart. My heart was beating so loudly that I could hear it, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It was a slow kiss, full of everything we had been holding in until that moment. It was as if all the tension that had built up had finally found an outlet. "I have to tell you something," Lily said, looking at me with fear. "I'm transsexual." "I know, Lily, my cousin told me, but it's not a problem for me, but it will be my first time," I said, giving her another kiss to calm her down. "Wow, what an honor for me to be your first transvestite." That night was a milestone. From that kiss onwards, I felt that something inside me had changed, as if I had crossed a barrier I had never imagined crossing. We held each other for a while in silence, just enjoying each other's presence. It was a moment that seemed suspended in time, as if nothing else mattered. Lily looked at me, her eyes shining with a mixture of emotions that I couldn't decipher. There was something magical in those depths, as if each of her feelings were dancing, jumping, and intertwining in the soft moonlight. "This is very special," she said, with a smile that showed she too had been impacted by it all. The way her lips curved revealed a secret that only the two of us knew. I nodded, at a loss for words to describe what I was feeling. My heart was racing and a wave of heat was rising through my skin. That night, Lily and I had our most intimate relationship. It was as if the outside world had disappeared and we were living in a parallel reality, where only what we were both experiencing existed. We got to know each other in a way that perhaps only that moment could provide. The rhythm of the music echoed in the distance, but we were the only stars of the show. The vibrant energy around us seemed to amplify every touch, every glance, as if everything was intensified by an invisible force. As we connected, our laughter echoed, mixing with the festive sounds, and I could feel the chemistry between us, as if with every step our bodies were more connected. Lily's contact with me sent waves of electricity throughout my being, and adrenaline was running wild. My senses were running wild, and with every movement, the excitement grew, making my heart race even faster. There was an intensity in her gaze that disarmed me, as if she knew exactly what I was thinking. It was a night full of passion, a mixture of sweetness and urgency that made me feel like I was floating. As the party continued to vibrate around us, we both moved a little away from the crowd. We found a quieter corner where the music was just a distant murmur, and the light from the hanging lanterns created an almost magical atmosphere. There, lost in our own world, the connection I felt was so intense that it felt like we were linked by something much bigger than ourselves. We talked between kisses and relationships, sharing laughs and whispered secrets. I talked about my fears and insecurities, and she listened intently, her eyes shining with empathy and understanding. There was something about the way she looked at me that made me feel loved, accepted. I knew that those moments would remain engraved in my memory, like an invisible tattoo on my heart. I felt I had learned a lot about myself, about what I was capable of feeling and taking risks. Life had taught me to be cautious, not to open up easily, but Lily was different. With her, I felt that I could be authentic, that I could let myself go. Our bodies danced together as if we were in perfect sync, and I didn't want that moment to end. Our time together was marked by laughter, glances, and moments that I knew I would treasure forever. Every gesture, every touch was like a silent promise that what we were experiencing was unique and precious. The intensity of our connection made me realize that life is made up of moments like that, fleeting but unforgettable. As the night progressed, the brilliance of the stars seemed to echo the intensity of what we had experienced. The parties in the city, with all their madness and joy, served as a perfect backdrop for our story. And in the midst of all that confusion, I found in Lily a clarity that I had never known before. And there, in that instant, I knew that everything we had experienced together had been wonderful, regardless of whether we were going to do it again or not. As the sun began to rise, flooding the sky with orange and pink hues, I realized that it was time to end that magical night. The city was waking up slowly, but for me, that night had been the highlight of everything, an experience I would carry with me forever. Lily and I laughed and talked all night long, as if the world around us had ceased to exist. And all that was left was the two of us, lost in our bubble of joy and discovery. The memories were fresh in my mind. The smell of the air, laden with music and vibrations, still seemed to echo in my ears. Laughter, dancing, and human warmth surrounded us, creating an electrifying atmosphere. I looked at Lily, who was still smiling with that bright, intense look that had enchanted me from the first moment I met her. It was hard to believe that we were saying goodbye. Every moment by her side had been a mixture of freedom and discovery, as if we had found ourselves in a different reality, where anything was possible and where every touch and look became eternal. When she held my hand for the last time, I felt a wave of emotion that I could barely contain. The pressure of her fingers intertwined in mine was a connection that transcended words. That moment was so intense that it felt like time had stopped, and we were just two souls lost in a world full of promises and secrets. It was an indescribable sensation, a mixture of joy at having lived that moment together and the sadness of knowing that, at dawn, we would go our separate ways. We sat in silence for a few moments, just looking at each other, as if we were trying to record every detail about each other. Her eyes were like windows into a universe of emotions, and I wanted to lose myself there forever. We said goodbye with one last kiss, a kiss that was much more than a simple goodbye. It was a kiss full of all the moments we had experienced that night. Every laugh, every touch, every word whispered in my ear. It was a kiss full of silent promises and memories that, even without being said, were already engraved in our hearts. As Lily pulled away, walking slowly towards the bedroom, my heart raced, and at the same time, an inexplicable calm enveloped me. I watched her from the doorway, observing her smile gradually disappear into the dim light. With every step she took, I felt that my life was changing, that I was opening a new chapter that I had never imagined possible. I knew that whatever the future held, that night would always have a special place in my memory. It was a chapter that, even with the passage of time, I would know by heart, as if every detail were tattooed on me. I returned to my room with my head full of memories and my heart light, but at the same time heavy from saying goodbye. The silence in the house was almost deafening, and I found myself surrounded by a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes, and it was as if everything was still happening. I could feel Lily's soft touch, the warmth of her skin, the sound of her laughter, the way her hair shone in the moonlight. I could see the sparkle in her eyes, that intensity that seemed to envelop me and make me forget everything around me. That night had been a turning point in my life, and I knew that nothing would be the same afterwards. It was a unique moment, one of those that life gives us and never returns. The idea that that experience would remain in my memory forever made me both hopeful and nostalgic. I went to sleep with the feeling that that day had transformed me, shown me new perspectives, and above all, made me live intensely, without fear of tomorrow. As my thoughts wandered, I began to reflect on everything that had happened. How could I have connected so deeply with Lily in such a short space of time? The chemistry between us seemed magical, as if we had been destined to meet at that party, in the middle of so many people, and create a unique bond. Every moment we shared, I felt her become part of me, a constant, vibrant presence that lit up my world. That night was more than just a celebration. It was a revelation. I had learned to open my heart, to let go of the barriers I had built up over the years. With Lily, everything seemed easier. lighter. She showed me that life is made up of small moments that are worth living intensely, without fear of giving in. As the sun rose, bringing a new day, I realized that even if our paths parted, those memories would remain with me forever. It was like a treasure kept deep in my heart, a memory that would accompany me through the darkest days and the happiest hours. I became aware that regardless of the circumstances, I had found a piece of happiness in those moments, and that was something that no one could take away from me. With that, I let sleep envelop me, immersed in dreams where Lily and I danced under the stars, laughing and celebrating life. The certainty that that night was a milestone in my history brought me unparalleled comfort. And so I fell asleep, anxious about what the future might bring, but certain that on that magical night, I had found something truly special. That's the story, my loves. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing this story with you. Every detail, every emotion, it was an incredible journey, wasn't it? Now I really want to know what you think. What did you think? Were you as impacted as I was? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read every message and reply. Oh, and if this story stuck with you until the end, don't forget to show your support. Give me that like, that really helps the channel grow so I can keep bringing you exciting stories. And of course, if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Just click on the subscribe button and, very importantly, activate the notification bell. That way, every time I post a new video, you'll receive an alert so you can check it out firsthand. Here on the channel, every detail makes a difference, and you're part of this journey. I look forward to bringing you more stories that move us.